Greg Corombos. Our guest this week on Veterans Chronicles is retired U.S. Marine Corps Brigadier General George Bartlett. He is a veteran of World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. In all, he spent 36 years in the U.S. Marine Corps. And, sir, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Sir, let's begin at the very beginning of your story. Where were you born and raised?
Born in Nampa, Idaho, and raised in Idaho. My father at first worked for the Union Pacific Railroad, but then during the Depression, they fired him or let him off. And he got a job with the state of Idaho, building roads in Custer County, Idaho, up near Sun Valley. And we lived in a little town called Mackay. Population 777. Never varied, because every time my baby was born, somebody left town. But it was a small town near the craters of the moon. And my father was the engineer that built the road through the craters of the moon that exist today, U.S. Highway 20. The craters of the moon is a piece of the moon that sits near Arco, Idaho, in the center part of Idaho. Quite a place to visit.
And when did you join the service?
15 February 1943. I enlisted in the Marine Corps in Portland, Oregon. Left that night for San Diego to recruit depot, which was then 12 or 13 weeks long. Rifle range included. Highest shooter on the rifle range of my group. And that's always a kudo. And they give you tests when you get there. GCT, General Classification Test, and Pattern Analysis Test, and blah, blah. But I was told after boot camp, 12 weeks, 13 weeks, boot camp, that I was going to go be a navigator. And I was 18 years old, and they called me in the next day and said, well, you got to be 19 to go to navigation school, so you can't go. What school would you like to go to? Well, all my buddies from my recruit training had gone to Chicago to Navy Pier to school. And I looked up on the board, and they were leaving the next week for Navy Pier. The detachments left on Thursday, and it was Wednesday. And I'm talking to this gentleman, and I said, well, I'll go. And I glanced up, AMM school. And he said, go pack your bag. You're leaving tomorrow morning for Jacksonville, Florida. So instead of going to be in Chicago, Illinois, where the liberty is good, I got sent to Jacksonville, Florida, and on a troop train out of San Diego. I went all over, and we ended up in Jacksonville. 26 weeks of school of AMM, Aviation Machinist Mate, learning to be an aircraft mechanic. Great school, and I was kind of a half-assed mechanic anyway. My father worked on cars and worked on his car, and I helped him. So I really enjoyed it. And I graduated number one in the class. They took me before an old colonel in the Marine Corps who fought in Nicaragua, flew in Nicaragua. I had his name, but I've forgotten it now. And he said, what do you want to do in the Marine Corps, Corporal? I said, I'm a private, sir. He said, no, you're a corporal. I just promoted you. Mm-hmm. And he said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to be an NAP, Naval Aviation Pilot, enlisted pilot. He said, great. He said, I'm going to send you. It's going to take 18 months, so I'm going to send you to navigation school first, and you'll go to Quantico, Virginia, and go to navigator bombardier school. And that'll be 16 weeks or so. And then after that, you can join the squadron, go fly your missions in the Far East, come back, 18 months will be up, and you can go to flight school. So that's really was what was going to happen to me. And when the war ended, I was headed home to go to flight school, and was on an island in the Admiralty Islands, Los Negros, and then Manus. And ship finally came by and picked us up. We waited 91 days for a ship. The war had just ended, and there was a lot of confusion.
Let's back up a moment and not skip over the part where you were a bombardier in the Pacific Theater of World War II. Tell us more about that.
Well, I flew 75 missions. The plane we flew was the Navy version of the B-25, the Doolittle plane, called a PBJ, patrol bomber by a North American. And I was the nose gunner, the bombardier, and the navigator. We were bombing Caviang, New Ireland, and Rabaul on New Britain, where there were 400,000 Japs. And once they were cut off and couldn't be resupplied, we bombed them on a continuous basis every day and every night. So sometimes you had night Heckler missions where two planes went out. One plane circled at 12,000 feet. They put the lights on you and you could read the book up there, or read a book up there, or while the guy down below was shooting the searchlights. And then when you dropped all your bombs, you'd trade places, and they would be up at 13,000 feet. And you looked for the searchlights so you could shoot them out. And we did that a couple of times. Mostly it was day flights to Caviang or Rabaul. Some high levels, 10,000. Some low level. And we all always enjoyed the low level because you got to shoot the nose gun. One flight, we were making a recce down New Ireland, which is a couple hundred miles long, and the road just goes right down the coast. So we had a 2,000-pound bomb with a 12-second delay fuse, and which means when you drop it, it stops and then you move on 12 seconds, and then it explodes. So I got up on top of the bomb bay and took out the hatch and watched the bomb drop. We were maybe 200, 300 feet. And this 2,000-pound bomb, which is a big piece of iron, believe me, was knocking down palm trees, and I'm counting 1,001, 1,002, 1,003, knocking down these trees, but it's directly below. I'm looking right at it. I can almost read the numbers on it. And then it started slowing down a little bit at about 8 or 9, 10, 11, and it's now, I can't see it anymore, 12. Then I saw the flash, but we were well out of it, so it was no problem. But I'm saying to myself, next time don't get up here and look, you might be too surprised. Then I said to myself, that's what the tail gunner sees. Sees the same thing I'm looking at right now. And it doesn't bother him. Why should it bother you that bomb's going to explode? So it was just another mission. But we never went up for any shipping because there was none left. We went up to Pulawat, 550 miles away. A squadron. We had 4 squadrons in the group. Each squadron gave 2 ships. They had to get 8, and then the leader was the ninth plane. They put upper Bombay tanks in, 215-gallon upper Bombay tanks, to go along with the 974-gallon wing tanks. So we had 1,000 gallons of fuel. You could literally fly 5 or 6 hours with that kind of fuel. And so they went in low level and skip bombed in trail formation. I was not in this raid. These 4 ships, and they never hit one of them. On 4 times they tried to hit a ship, and 4 times the bombs skipped over the ship and blew up on the other side, or just buried itself in the water on this side of the ship. So we weren't too good. But one crew was shot down, and they ditched a couple of hours south of the island, and we went out looking for them the next day and couldn't find them. Went out the next day and couldn't find them. So the colonel in charge of the group said, well, let's knock off the search. We don't need them. We've lost them. And our colonel, lieutenant colonel, asked the group commander, he said, it's our people. Can I go one more day? He said, sure, go ahead. And we felt that they were a little further back than where we were looking. So we went and searched a different area and found them the next day and identified them. And a Navy ship, the USS Witter, came in and picked them up. They had 3 one-man life rafts. The plane has a 5-man life raft that when it ditches, when it gets underwater, the canopy opens it automatically. But it didn't, so they didn't have a 5-man raft. They only had the little dinghies that you get that's hanging on you. So they put the Kleckner, the co-pilot, was pretty badly wounded. So they put him in one of these one-man rafts, and then Wall and I lost his name, shared another, and Hemingway, the junior guy, 19 years old, they put him, they said, you just hang on to the side. You got a life jacket on, you're not going to sink. And if sharks came around, they'd take Hemingway, they'd drag him up onto the one where two guys are sitting. And, okay, a ship, Tiger, they're gone. Back in the water, Hemingway. At least we identified him. They picked him up by the winter, got him, took him to back to Emeru, and they went wall joined my crew later. I was living in Charlotte, North Carolina in 1995, and I saw an ad in a magazine. Does anybody know Hemingway Wall, blah, blah, blah? And I said, okay, it was a collector. I said, I called the guy in Seattle. I said, that's the crew that went down and raid on Palawan. He said, well, I was on the ship that got him, and we were having a reunion, and we want to find him if we can and invite him to our reunion. So I was able to get him in touch, and all four of the guys went to the reunion with the Navy. And every year they would join up with guys that saved their lives. Turned out the biggest thing the ship did in the war was save 4 Marines, and so it was kind of a I love you too. It was a good sidelight.
General, let's pause right there. We'll take a very quick break. We'll be right back with retired U.S. Marine Corps Brigadier General George Bartlett on Veterans Chronicles. We're back on Veterans Chronicles. I'm Greg Columbus, honored to be joined in studio today by retired U.S. Marine Corps Brigadier General George Bartlett. He's a veteran of World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. And, sir, you mentioned just before the break the dramatic rescue of those men who had been shot down. On your bombing missions, how would you describe the level of Japanese resistance? How fierce was it?
Very, very slight, to be honest with you. It was almost a cakewalk. It kind of made us all mad because we joined to fight the Japs, not just bomb them. And we got to fly missions. After 25 missions, they'd send us to Sydney, Australia for R&R. Now, in the war, World War II, Australia was a nation of 4 million people. The Brits took 1 million men and shipped them to England to fight for the Brits in Europe for England, leaving the women and children alone in Australia. So there was 1 million women without husbands down there, whose husbands were fighting for the Brits. So they'd send us to Sydney on R&R. It was a dirty, rotten job to have to go down there and dance with those women and take them out, take them to dinner. And the Aussies are great people, in case you don't know it. If you ever have a chance to go to Australia, do it, because they're as much Americans as we are. They are really great.
So after the war, you went to college, got your degree, and you were back in the Marine Corps at the start of the Korean War, but this time as an officer, correct?
That's right. I got out of the Marine Corps. I'd gone to Oregon State one term in 1942, and then got drafted or enlisted, really. But I came back and went to Case School of Applied Science in Cleveland. It's an engineering school. And played football and flunked out after the first semester. So I transferred back to Oregon and went to Eugene, Oregon, instead of Corvallis, because Corvallis was a cow college. It really was a cow college. And so I took architecture at Oregon, and I was in the reserves. And then I got a disability, so I didn't have to go to the reserves anymore. And I had fungus in my fingernails. It was really a bad disability. But it was enough to get, anyway, I got called back in 50. And 6 days from the day I left Eugene, Oregon, I was navigating on a plane across the Pacific from El Toro, California to Hawaii, and then on up to Kwajalein and Guam, Tokyo, Korea, Tokyo, Midway, back to Barbers Point in Hawaii. And usually when we came back from Tokyo, they would put 26 litter patients on the plane and a nurse. And when we'd land at Hickam, and they would take them and put them in Tripler General Hospital in Hawaii, and we would pick up and go to Barbers Point, an airfield nearby Honolulu, and spend the night, and then we'd fly back to El Toro the next day. And then a week later, we would do the same trip again. And basically, we were carrying the highest priority cargo was corpsmen. because there were so many being shot and wounded during the Korean War that the Marines needed corpsmen, and so the Navy, the highest priority of cargo was corpsmen. And we had a GI can on the plane that used as a head, a latrine. And the crew chief would say, "Okay, we'd brief you guys on leaving on this flight. Now, blah, 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 the toilet. And he who first to use the can will leave the plane with can in hand." So everybody sat around for hours holding it till somebody had the guts to get up and go to the toilet. And then that guy had to, when he left the plane, had to take the can with him. And I guess I flew 70 hours round trip from El Toro to Haneda, Japan, and then or Yokosuka, and back to El Toro. I did that for 5 or 6 months, and then was selected to go to an officer training course at Quantico. They brought 500 Marines to Quantico on a screening course, and we had a 12-week screening course, and they commissioned 370 or 380 of them. And luckily I was one of the ones that got commissioned. We then went on to our specialties. I put in for flight school, thinking I'm a cinch now, but they said, well, not because I'm an officer, and I should be a pilot. I got 2,000 hours in the air, 75 missions. I'm a hero, blah, blah, blah. But they wouldn't hear me, and they said, no, you're going to be an air controller. So they sent me to Cherry Point, North Carolina for 12 weeks of air control school, learning how to be an air controller, and then I went to Korea as an air controller. While in Korea, we in the Air Force, the Marines in the Air Force, took an island in North Korea called Chodo. It's 5 miles off the beach, and it was up near Pyongyang. And we put a radar on it and a height-finding gear, and the Marine Corps furnished the height-finding gear. So they gave us 2 officer billets. So I was one of the officers that went up there with the first one that went. And it was all the whole air war for the Korean War was done right there in Chodo. And the B-29s checked in with us, the B-24s, all the night fighters checked in with us. We ran missions and flights to shoot down the North Koreans, the Russians really. And so it was a really first-class operation. To get there, I had to leave my unit, fly up to Seoul, and then they drove me or put me in a helicopter and sent me out to Pyangdo, it was called. It was the last island below the DMZ on the west. And we had a Marine unit out there, and I checked in. And so then he called for the helicopter to come get me. And this helicopter left Chodo and was 100 and some miles over water. And at that time, the ocean was frozen solid. And the pilots and the people in the plane were wearing what we call poopy suits, immersion suits. And I didn't have one, so they said, well, the chances of you living long after you go in is slim to none anyway, so you get in the plane, we'll fly you up there. So they flew me up to Chodo, and that's where I was, and it was fantastic. We had a lot of fun. During our crew, we had a 4-man crew, and we had 3 radar scopes, and then the position called senior controller. So the 4 of us took turns doing a job at each one of those positions for 8 hours. And you might be on the night fighters, night bombers, the Navy and Marine Corps scope, or you just senior controller. So one night, the guy pilot says, "Hey, my engine's acting up. Can I drop my bombs and give me a free drop?" And the guy says, "All right, you're over North Korea. Go ahead and drop." And then go on back. Well, within an hour, the phone rang, and it was the colonel in charge of air control in the Far East. He said, "Who authorized that drop on North Korea?" And the guy said, "I did." He says, "Well, you dropped on the 1st Marine Division. And Marines don't like having Air Force guys drop bombs on them. So you get down to the beach tomorrow morning, I'll send a plane up to get you. I want to talk to you. So the colonel's plane was waiting for him. We got off watch. This Air Force officer gets on the colonel's plane, and they fly off to Seoul. And unbeknownst to them, there was a storm brewing. And after they left, we got hit with a hell of a storm. And he couldn't get back. So now there's only three of us to run 4 scopes. And the colonel is chewing his ass out. And the phone rings, and it's the General Barkas from the 5th Air Force in Seoul. He says, "Who controlled the flight that sank those?" Because later on in the evening, there was a ship trying to get down, or some planes trying to get down to bomb Incheon, and we tried to shoot them down and couldn't, and they bombed, and we're going back, and we still tried to shoot them down, and we did shoot them down, but it was the same guy that dropped the bomb that controlled the intercept. So the general says, who ran the intercept to get those planes? And he said, well, I got him right here. Bring him over. And so the guy gets a Bronze Star for dropping a bomb on Marines and shooting down 3 Russian planes.
Let's take another quick break right there. General Bartlett will be right back on Veterans Chronicles. We're back on Veterans Chronicles. I'm Greg Corumbus, along with retired U.S. Marine Corps Brigadier General George Bartlett. He's a veteran of World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. We were just talking about his service in Korea, and sir, go ahead and pick up the story that you were telling us just before the break. I know there's an interesting story about a clock that you wanted to share.
Well, there's a plane was shot up and called us in the control center to alert the helicopters to come pick him up. He was going to ditch in the ocean. I said, why ditch? The tide's out, and we got a 30-foot tide. Just land your plane on the beach, wheels up. He says, I said, no problem, do it. And so they directed him to the spot where he could start landing. He scoped it out and landed wheels up. So when I got off watch the next morning, the plane is sitting, tide's coming in. Well, I'd been a mechanic, so we got the wrecker, we picked it up, pumped the gear down, pumped the tail wheel down, and started dragging the thing up to the high water line. Well, the plane wasn't dragging too well because the tail wheel was probably a foot in diameter and was just digging into the sand and wasn't letting us pull it. The truck didn't have enough power. So we turned it around and pulled it by the tail, and we raised the tail with a bar that we shoved through the plane and pulled it off the ground, raised it up, and then towed the plane to the high water mark. And while we're doing this, the pilot comes who had done it when the helicopter came to get him, and he said, what are you doing to my plane? And we're trying to save it. But in the meantime, we were beating up the propeller and had kind of broken the tail wheel, but it wasn't going to fly into place anyway. So we drug to the high water mark, and the Marines came up from Mag 12 and stripped it down of all the parts they needed. So while they're doing that, I'm inside. I took the clock out of that plane, and I had that clock. I was in 53, probably for the next 20 years, and maybe even longer. And I finally found out who the pilot was, tracked him down, and sent the clock to him. Well, maybe I got the story wrong. No, I had the clock, and wrote the story up for the newsletter from the Aviation Association. And the woman who recognized the name was her husband, was the pilot. And we verified that he was the guy that should have the clock. So I gave the clock up, and we sent it to her. So this would have been in 85, 88, 90, someplace in there, 95. And she got the clock out of a plane that her husband was shot down in 53, maybe. Yeah, probably 53. So the clock was in my hands for 20 years, and then she got it. But it was really great to have a 7-day clock.
General, I know you had some very interesting assignments between Korea and Vietnam, including, for example, the very quick construction of a flight strip in Taiwan. Explain what happened there.
They had an operation on Taiwan from the 1st Marine Division, and we were supporting it. I had the only engineer company in the Far East, C Company, 7th Engineer Battalion. And they're based at Camp Pendleton, but this company was sent to the 3rd Division, so they'd have some engineer support. I should back up. A Marine at Quantico, an aviator, was developing a landing field that would be portable because jets were coming in, and Marston matting has holes in it, so it's not compatible with flying a jet. So he said, suppose we took that Marston mat and welded a sheet of aluminum on the top and on the bottom, and then had some way to screw them together. We could build an airfield, a solid airfield of aluminum, and they wouldn't have any what they call FOD, foreign object damage in the plane, and we can do it. So I was given the job to build the airfield on Taiwan. It was the first time it was ever done, and they had the mat. They had made the mat, had it in storage on Okinawa, and they put it aboard ship and brought it down and delivered it to me. And we worked out a deal to lay this mat, and it was a lot more than just laying it. We found out that the way they screwed it together was done by hand, but you needed an air wrench where you just then the two were together, rather than a T-bar where you'd stand there for 10 minutes to tighten one nut. And I went to the colonel and who I was doing it for, and he says, we'll have them to you tomorrow. The next day on Okinawa, 2, 4, or 5 air guns were delivered to me at the company. And we were very well then we messed with the mat and figured out how long it would take us to lay the airfield. If you had the T-bar, it would take about 5 days. If you didn't have the T-bar, it would take less than a day and a half. So he sent us the air guns, and we then landed and started building it on an old Japanese runway at Hengchang, and we just took a grader and graded off the rice paddy type stuff on the top of the concrete. It was 2-inch or 3-inch concrete. Would not support a present-day jet plane, but supported World War II type planes. And so we then marked on the ground, and then 1,133 feet, 6.5 inches, another mark. 1,133 feet, 6 inches, another mark. So we started laying in 3 different places. We'd lay a row, come back, lay a row, come back, lay a row. And when we got together, it just kind of fell right into place. We welded a sheet of aluminum across the top of the juncture, so the tail hook or the plane was completely safe. And we finished that field in 37 hours and landed planes on it in 48. And the planes we landed were the high-speed jets, an F-4D from Douglas, A4, little A4 attack plane, and the colonel flew in an F-8U, a Corsair, and not a Corsair, it's a jet version of the Corsair, high speed, really a great plane. And so we landed that, and then we took the field up, bounded it up again, and we made a motion picture of it. Took that motion picture to Congress, the Marine Corps did. Congress said, boy, this is great, and gave the Marine Corps $2 or $3 million. So they went down to Alabama or Georgia, and there's a company down there, that foundry that makes aluminum, and they ordered 3 aluminum runways. And they got one, they put it at 29 Palms, California, and they put the other 2 in storage. So we had a runway that we could work on in California. It was really quite a feat.
Oh, it really is. It's amazing. And I know there's another memorable project you were on as well, this one involving the atomic issue. When was that, and what happened?
Oh, I was second lieutenant, and realized that I needed a master's degree. So I put in for a postgraduate school at Monterey, and they said, "Well, can't send you, but if you want to go to night school, we'll bring you here to headquarters, Marine Corps in Washington, and you can go to night school in the Pentagon. GW has a program." So I did that, and I got my master's degree in personnel management. And And when I left the headquarters, I was ordered to Fort Belvoir Engineer School for 16, 20 weeks. And then I went to Camp Pendleton, and I walked into Camp Pendleton, and at first, I got my master's degree, and the guy told me, he said, "You're the 150th officer ever in the Marine Corps to have an advanced degree." Education was not stressed in the military until the early 50s. And we had colonels that had sixth grade educations, But now everybody's getting better. Now today, everybody has a master's degree. If you don't have one, well, you're gonna die on the vine. So anyway, I got my master's, and I checked into the 1st Division at Camp Pendleton, and they said, "Wow, you got a master's degree. We're going to put you in the Atomic Exercise Brigade." I said, "What's that?" He said, "Well, it's a secret, we can't tell you, but you're going to enjoy it." Well, I joined them, and we went to Desert Rock, Nevada, and went through 3 atomic bomb blasts. And pretty impressive. First one, for Priscilla, countdown goes 3, 2, 1, and then there's supposed to be a flash. Nothing. Misfire, 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 misfire. Then on the loudspeaker, "Do not move, do not stand up, do not open your eyes." And that went on for about 4 hours until I could get somebody up into the tower to disarm the bomb. And what had happened when it was in a 750-foot tower, when they took the elevator away, it bounced back and crimped and cut the wires that were going to explode the bomb. So it never exploded. So this guy climbs up a 750-foot tower, had a ladder that circled all the way up. He goes in, disarms the bomb, and then once it's disarmed, we could leave. So they said, "Well, we bring all these Marines up." We had 1,000 Marines up there going through the case, and he said, "Well, keep me here another week. We'll put them on Hood." Hood was an 80 KT, where Priscilla had been a 30 or a 20 KT. It was the biggest bomb they exploded in Desert Rock, Nevada. It was Hood. So we were in the trench, and countdown goes, and when we hit 1, I mean, the light you would not believe. It is something. And then immediately, and that's the only time you can be heard, is when the light and the radiation of the thing. But we're in a trench down deep, so there's none reflected to you. And the winds go by, and then the back wind, then we can stand up and look around. And there's the fireball, 1,000 feet in diameter, going up 1,000 miles an hour. It's really pretty impressive. And then you form up as a unit, and you've got an operation you're putting on. So you're going to attack 2 up and 1 back, and you attack right through ground zero, and you got your monitors. And so if you find a hot spot, well, you tape it off, and this is what you'd do in combat if you were in an atomic bomb blast. And so it was a lot of fun. Learned a lot. None of us got any radiation to speak of, although I got melanomas on my arms, so maybe there's something to it. That was 60 years ago, but it was pretty impressive.
So in 1965, you began your first tour in Vietnam, and for service in that assignment, you were awarded the Navy Commendation Medal with Combat V. What unit were you with on that tour? What was your objective, and what actions led to that award?
Well, the Navy had a ship of Marines afloat. Had 3 ships that were a unit. It had 1,000 Marines afloat. And still to this day have them. And they're called ARGs, Amphibious Ready Group. And we were sent down to Vietnam, and they never had a staff. They just had the people in the unit. Well, you can't kind of be in the unit and plan ahead. You need somebody to do all the planning for you. So I was picked up and sent down to the Philippines to join the ship. 2 of us went, and we wrote the order. Well, we had this unit available, and during the Vietnam War, we made 15 amphibious landings at different points along I Corps to support I Corps operations, and we knew where we had the intelligence to know where the VC were, and then we'd plan an operation to land, to destroy them, and pull back to the ship, and go and make another. So we made 15 amphibious landings in the year that I was out there. So we were pretty busy. It was really a lot of fun, and they still have that, the plans for that. And if they were to do something tomorrow, it'd be what we wrote in 1964, 65.
Let's talk briefly about your second tour as well, sir. I believe that started in 1970. What were your unit and objective then?
Went back to 3 MAF. I went to 3 MAF headquarters, and I was a lieutenant colonel. So jobs are kind of scarce, but I found a job as a G1, assistant G1, personnel man type. And then the G1 went home. So I became the G1, and then I got promoted to colonel, and it was a colonel's billet. So I got to keep it. But in the meantime, I'd gone to the G3 slot and done planning also for operations. A very interesting job. The Marines that we had there, we had the 1st Division and some unit of the 5th Division. So we had plenty of people to fight. It was a matter of getting them around and getting them to the fight. Not enough helicopters to carry them, so a lot of them were seaborne and strictly on the coast. After Korea, I was sent to NATO and was sent to Naples, Italy, where I was the head planner in the logistics section for NATO. And we had operations in Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Turkey. And when I got there, I worked with a guy, and he said, we built a field on Taiwan, in Sicily, built an airfield, and we built one on Crete. And the Americans told us they'd be flying such and such a plane. Well, now that we've got that plane and got the field, planes can't land because the tire pressure is too high and breaks up the concrete. So we really need something, either need a deeper concrete, more concrete, or smaller planes. Well, I said, somebody should have done a program as to run a study and find out. So I wrote a report on employment in the Med, and the admiral who in charge of it thought it was pretty well written. So he sent me off to Greece and Turkey to work with the people there to see what they could do about developing some plans that took into effect the thought of strengthened runways. And then we had the mat that we could use, which spread the weight. And so again, the mat that we had developed in Taiwan and had been purchased could be used in emergencies to land and support the Marines in Greece or Turkey.
General, let me pause you right there. We'll take one more break, and we'll be right back with retired Marine Corps Brigadier General George Bartlett on Veterans Chronicles. Welcome back to Veterans Chronicles and our final segment this week as we visit with retired U.S. Marine Corps Brigadier General George Bartlett, veteran of World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. And, sir, you've had so many different assignments over your 36 years in the Corps. There was flight, there was engineering, there was atomic. A lot of those involved planning, especially as you rose in your rank. As you learned about planning, did you discover that it's something that can be easily taught, or is a lot of it really innate?
Well, I don't think it can be taught, but it can be gleaned by having done it. And the G3 or the S3 of the unit is the key guy, I think, in any operation. The 3 is where it all operations. It's where it all happens. And you need a planning staff for future stuff to be up to speed on plans, that you know what you're capable of, and if you get a new ability or a new something, to write that into the plan and use it on the next operation. So it's something that has to happen, but the planner is a key guy as far as I'm concerned. The operations guy is just doing daily stuff, but you got to have somebody looking ahead for you with a eye to the future as to what might happen and how we would react, and then get it organized so that you can react.
When were you promoted to Brigadier General?
1975, and at headquarters Marine Corps, and was put in charge of the PXs and the commissaries, housing, construction. That's about it. I thought I'd been elected mayor of the Marine Corps because I had all the stuff to do. Interesting job and a never a dull day, but there wasn't. I didn't see any going to war as commissary and PX guy. But it was an interesting job, a fun job. Somebody had to do it. So I went to the commandant after 2 years and said, "Is there any chance of getting a command? Everybody wants a command. That's the main thing." He said, "Well, boy, George," he said, and I'm not sure. He said, "When you made general, they deep selected you, and as a result, you really are now a general, but you were deep selected. And now if I were to assign you someplace and you didn't cut the mustard, then I wouldn't be fair to the troops." I said, "Judge, you told me I wasn't passed over or anything. You told me you had a chance, and now you're telling me you won't assign me one to a command because I wouldn't be fair to the troops." I said, "I don't think you're being honest with me, General," and walked out and retired. Put my letter in to retire, which really, excuse me the expression, pissed him off. But I had 36 years, and if I wasn't going to get a command, I wasn't going to hang around. And walked out, found a civilian job, enjoyed it. It was really great with American Gas Association. And then I got a call from P.X. Scully, the acting, I guess he was the assistant commandant. Assistant commandant. He said, "George," he said, "we're looking for a replacement for somebody to run the Marine Corps Association at Quantico, which published Gazette and other magazines, and run the operation down there. Would you be interested?" And I said, "No, I left the Marine Corps." PX, I told General Wilson I had a great 36 years, but now I'm on retired life. And he said, "Well," he says, "we really need you. Would you come back and run the association?" So I returned to Quantico to run the Marine Corps Association, which I found out was going broke when I got there. So we did a few things, and within 2 years, I had amassed enough money that we could build a brand new building, pay cash for it, I think $3 million cash, and have a new building on the base that if anything happened and we didn't use it, well, it would revert to the Marine Corps. But it was the Marine Corps Association. So I had a staff of, 20 or 30 people, publishing 2 magazines, running a bookstore, running an life insurance program. And we made we made a bundle of money, I'm telling you. It made so much that I left in 10 years, and it was taking care of us, and we were doing well for the Marine Corps. They did well by us.
General, last question. After such a long, distinguished career that gave you many different opportunities, you served in 3 major wars. When you think of your service, What are you most proud of?
I kind of roll it all into one. Proud of everything I did, and but I think my contribution on the runway, the aluminum runway, and was probably the most important thing. My contribution was the SATS runway, short airfield for tactical support. It had the biggest impact on what we did as a corps, and I enjoyed being the guy that did it. I had a great crew of people who did the work, and got it built, and saw it the way I did, and it was a lot of fun, all in all. And I don't think I never looked back. And when I retired, I developed a 5-year plan of things to do. Well, it turns out my 5-year plan of places to go and things to see, I ended up with 2 5-year plans. And the only place I haven't been in the world is the Antarctic. And so I think I'm successful. But I would love to have gone down there.
General Bartlett, thank you very much for your time today and for your service to our country. We greatly appreciate it.
Certainly welcome, and thank you for taking the trouble to hear what I had to say. Most of it was true, by the way.
I'm sure it's all true. Retired U.S. Marine Corps Brigadier General George Bartlett, veteran of World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. Thank you for listening to Veterans Chronicles, a presentation of the American Veterans Center. For more information, please visit AmericanVeteransCenter.org. You can also follow the American Veterans Center on Facebook, and on Twitter, we're at AVC Update. Subscribe to the American Veterans Center YouTube channel for full oral histories and special features. And of course, please subscribe to the Veterans Chronicles podcast wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Greg Corombos, and please join us next time for Veterans Chronicles.